Okay, Tov. Today's Daf is Daf Mem in Zbachim, as we learned for Achim Kol Beis Yisrael and soon with Sarva Shivya. Yesterday we got down to Abaya Omar, about halfway down on the page. What are we discussing? These psukim again. The first parsha or the previous parsha, at least not the very first parsha, but it was almost the first parsha in Perek Dalet. It talked about the Kohen Mashiach. That means if the Kohen Gadol sinned himself based on his own psak, the korban he has to bring is called the Par Kohen Mashiach or the Par Kohen Gadol. Then the next parsha was talking about Par Hamdav Shel Tzibur, when the whole Tzibur followed an error, a judgment or a halacha, an error that the Bezdin Gadol had paskin, and they bring a similar Par Kohen that's called the Par Hamdavar. And the psukim are all a little bit confused because we had seemingly an ex pasuk chaf was in Perek Dalet, seemed to be an extra pasuk, but also la par kasher, so la par chatos. So that whole pasuk seemed to be extra. What was it necessary for? So yesterday the Gemara began to discuss what each was. We started with the Tan Rabbanan and Lamed Tesam at Aleph and explained what each phrase or each word was for. And then we said, okay, fine. One of the things we said was that Matan Sheva is Ma'akvas B'chol Makom. That's why it was necessary to repeat it and say Asa Kasher Asa, to teach me that it's doubled up, meaning the lashon is repeated to say that it's ma'akev, that it's indispensable. But the question is, so he says, okay, that's Matan Sheva, but Matan Dalet also is also ma'akev by these inner karbonis. Remember the Matan Arba, which is a regular chatos, and an outer chatos, only according to Beis Hillel, you only need one zrika to be yotzei. But the inner karbonos, all four are necessary. All four zrikas on a carbon that's brought on the inside the heichal. So where do you find this? Matan Sheva is makwas all over, like by Paraduma and by Nagavim. Matan Arba, how do we know? Why do we need a special pasuk? He says Kein Yaseh. So the Gemara says, why do we assume that the Matan of Zion are written and repeated? The same thing the same pasuk that says Vasa Kasharasa, which tells you that the Matan Zion is effectively repeated, that those same words could help you to determine that the Matan Dalet, all four are ma'akev. That's Rav Meir said no. It's going according to Rav Shimon, who says that it really only says two matanos by Par Kohen Mashiach and two by Par Medavar, and we learn on a hekesh between the two of them. That's how you get four. So it doesn't really say four any place, and therefore we need another word or phrase, and that's why we said Talmud Lomer Kein Yaseh. The word Kein Yaseh in pasuk chaf, the word Kein Yaseh, it's not Asa Kasher Asa. The Kein Yaseh, the words later on in the pasuk, that tells me that the Matan Dalet is also doubled up, is repeated effectively, so that it's ma'akev, according to Rav Shimon. Rabbi Yehuda says no, you don't need that. It says Oel Moed. It says, why do I say but Oel Moed? Oel Moed tells you all the four corners that are in the Oel Moed. That's the Oel Moed is the Heichal, the Mizbach HaKtoras or Mizbach HaZov, which is in the Oel Moed in the Heichal. That's what it's referring to when it says Oel Moed. Means all four corners there. So I don't need another pasuk for that, right? Like it doesn't say so therefore, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the effect of repeating Oel Moed is telling you that that's your double lashon. You said already that's in the. It says Al Karnos Mizbech, Al Karnos Mizbach HaKtoras Asher Lifnei Hashem. So Asher Lifnei Hashem Asher Ba'Oel Moed. What's that extra? Oel Moed is to tell me it already says Asher Lifnei Hashem. Teach the Al Karnos V'Tochechel that you have to evolve them, that it's ma'akev. So Rabbi Yehuda knows from the lashon of Ba'Oel Moed that it has to be all four. That those are indispensable. So Rav Yehuda doesn't need it. What does he do with Kein Yaseh? So the Gemara went to say, because how do we know that by Par Yom Kippur that you need smicha and shiraim, that's ma'akev? Because it says Kein Yaseh. Kein Yaseh. The Gemara says, what do you mean? Par Yom Kippur, we already learned from the extra word of lapar. Amr lapar, Zayim Kippur. So I might think that's only things which are ma'akev the kapara, like regular zrika. But a voda which is not ma'akev the kapara, like smicha and shiur edam, no, kamashma, no, that also is ma'akev. So therefore we know that everything there is ma'akev. So the Gemara says, what does Rav Shimon do with Oel Moed? He uses that for if the base of Mikdash is somehow the roof is somewhat defective, that it's been broken in, then you can't do the house all there. The whole temple, the whole heichal has to be intact. And the other one learns that off from Asher, and he doesn't share. Abai says you don't have to say that in Rabbi Yehuda. The Rabbi Yehuda Nami Yitzrach. But Rabbi Yehuda also needs a special pasuk to teach me that all 4 zrikas on the inner mizbeach are ma'akiv. Salchaim, I might think this is where we left off. Amar Bayom, about halfway down the page. Bayom, the Rabbi Yehuda Nami Yitzrach. Salchaim, I might meet it. Smicha v'shirayim. Just like smicha v'shirayim, daf agav d'ksivim v'kilim. Even though they're written and repeated, lo ma'akiv, they're not ma'akiv. So matan amar nami lo ma'akiv. We said by Yom Kippur, right? We said before. It doesn't say by Yom Kippur smicha and shirayim, so it teaches me that you have to be by Yom Kippur also. But at the end of the day, it's not ma'akiv if you didn't do smicha and shirayim. So since we say why, so just like smicha and shirayim, even though it's written and it's repeated over here, where by par helm double shel tzibur, right? Because it's effectively everything, all the avodas there are repeated. Rashi says. Rashi says right where before the lines get wide. That even if you didn't do it, it's your yotzei. Right? So matan amar nami lo ma'akev should also not be ma'akev. That's what I might think. Just like smicha and shiraim are not ma'akev. So here also it's not ma'akev if you didn't do the 4 zrikas kamash malon. Therefore it teaches me that it is ma'akev. And that's why it has to say a special pasuk of Kenyasa for the Parah Mudavar, that those 4 zrikas there are also ma'akev if you didn't do all 4. Then he goes on, Lapar Zepar Kippur. The first drush that we said, right? The Parah Kippur. If you on the last line on Lametes and Aleph, the drasha was Kenyasa. The last few words on Lametes and Aleph were, what is the word Lapar? Zepar Yom Kippurim. Now this Lapar we're speaking about is the first Lapar in the pasuk Chav. Also Lapar. That par is really Par Yom Kippurim, even though it doesn't say it. We're talking in the parsha here, Par Madavar Shel Tzibur. That's a Par Yom Kippur. So the Gemara says, what are you teaching me here? That Yom Kippur's par, the par that you bring on Yom Kippur, is similar to the Par Madavar Shel Tzibur. In what sense? If it's to tell me that everything is ma'akev, pshita chuka ksiva. It says by Par Yom Kippur, it says the lashon chuka. Chuka is another lashon of ma'akev. If it says like zos or chuka, or if it's repeated. So I know everything there is ma'akev, chukik sivbe. According to Rabbi Yehuda, the Amar Kiksiv, and when it says chukah, only on certain procedures that are done with the white garments. The Kohen switches off his white garments and gold garments several times during the day of Yom Kippur. And I might think that it says chukah is only going on the garments that he wears, that when he wears the white garments, on the avodah that he does inside the heichal. That if you didn't do it the proper order, loss of lokum, because it says chukah. Chukah means it's got to be that way. That's the statute. Things that are done outside the heichal doesn't mean outside the azor, means outside the heichal. The order is not demanding. In other words, it's not indispensable if you did it in reverse order. Since the order that the Kohen's operations, his procedures that he does outside the heichal are not ma'akiv, the order is not it's not ma'akiv, it's not indispensable. Meaning, if you did it in a different order, it's still your yosei. So azos nami lo ma'akiv. I might think the azos of Yom Kippur are also not ma'akiv. Kamashmon that it is. So what do you see here? So you see here that it could be that even though it says chukah, chukah could be for other drushes, but not for Dvarim and Asim Bavil V'Mechutz are not ma'akev. I might think that the zrikas there are also not ma'akev. Therefore, it says lapar to tell me that it's ma'akev, that you have to, that the order of the zrikas is ma'akev by Yom Kippur. Maskiv or Papa, 6-7 lines from the bottom of the page. Maskiv Papa, what do you mean? Can you say that Rabbi Yehuda learns out from what? From lapar that the order is ma'akev from there. Rashi says, Rabbi Yehuda, Akiva Me'acha, you learn out from Lapar that the order is ma'akev. But Tanya, we learn by Yom Kippur, it says, V'chila mikaperes hakodesh, when he finishes from atoning in the holy, right? So one drush is im kippur kila. Once you did zrika and you get your atonement, you're done really. In other words, the other operations like the shiur dam is not ma'akev. Being low keeper, if you didn't do these zrikas, then you didn't finish. In other words, the key is, did you do the zrikas? Divrei Rabbi Kiva. Some have a different gears over here that it's Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, but Pashto has Divrei Rabbi Kiva. Omer Rabbi Yehuda said, no. Learn it this way. Neimalo nemar. Why doesn't it say neimalo nomar? Why don't you not neimalo nomar lo nemar, but neilo nomar? Why don't we say im kila keeper. It says v'chila mikaper zakodesh. If you finished everything, including the shiur dam, right? Im lo kila, and as if you finished everything that's prescribed over here, then you get a kapara. Im lo kila lo keeper. So what do you see? He learns out from a kila mikaper zakodesh there that it's everything is ma'akiv. That the order that everything is ma'akiv. We got to do it exactly the way it's written over here. Rashi, 4 lines from the bottom of the page. This, everything has to be in the exact order on Yom Kippur, the way it's originally prescribed, is learned out from Imkila, not from Lapar. I'll tell you what Lapar is for. The reason we compare Yom Kippur to Par Hamadover with the word Lapar and Par Mashiach, remember that Par Kohen Mashiach and Par Kohen and Par Hamadover are already mukish to one another, not only because they're in neighboring Parshio in Perek Dalet, but also, as we'll see, that the word kasher sa lapar, not the first lapar. The first lapar is Yom Kippur. The second lapar is the par of Par Kohen Mashiach. So Par Hamadover is compared to Par Kohen Mashiach. So Rav Papa says, there's 3 things that it says when the parsha of Par Kohen Mashiach, the first parsha, it says, "V'toval hakohen es etzba'o badam." He'll dip his right index finger in the dam. V'hiza. So it says over there, toval, dip it in. It says over there, S, v'toval hakohen S, and it says S, and it says badam and badam. It says v'loka v'toval hakohen S etzba'o badam. So it says tefillah, dipping. S, it says the word S there, which we're going to darshan, and badam, in the blood. What do we mean there? It says that by Par Kohen Mashiach. It doesn't say that by Par Hamadover. Those words are not, it doesn't say there S. It says by Par Kohen, by Par Hamadover, it says v'toval, now going to say so min hadam. It doesn't say badam, and it doesn't say S there. So what do you learn from those drushes? What is those drushes for? That says that by Par Kohen Mashiach. Remember, Par Kohen Mashiach and Par Hamadover are already mukish to one another. So now the first lapar is Yom Kippur. So we're going to teach you that by Yom Kippur it also has to be es dam and v'toval. What does that mean? What is es dam v'toval? We know we're talking about the blood. Of course, what else do you sprinkle on the mizbeach? So he explains here. Amar Bach Bar Yaakov, last line on the page on Mem Amaral from the Gemara. Let's lahachshir amin shebe etzba. A person, let's say the Kohen has a wart growing on his finger. And when he dipped his finger in the dam, the dam went on the wart. He actually smeared the dam with the wart on his finger. The answer is the wart is part of your finger, and it's okay. It's not a chatzitza. So that's number 1. So he says, okay. So what is the words es dam? So he explains. We do es dam tefillah. Es, the second to the last line on Mem Amar Aleph. The word es. S, what does that teach me? If you have a wart on your finger, badam, and according to the way the sheet explains it, it doesn't say badam, but it says badam. She badam shiur tefillah means this: when you have to be zorik on all 4 corners, there's got to be enough blood in there for all 4 corners. Let's say you just took a few drops, enough for 1 corner, then you were makabel in another cup, another few drops, and then you did that. No, it's got to be when you're beginning the tefillah, when you're beginning the dipping your finger into the blood, there's got to be enough there for the whole thing, for the whole operation. As a badam shehei badam shiur tefillah miikara. Before, when you start sprinkling or smearing the blood on the corners, you have to have enough there, enough blood in the cup for all four corners. Pardon? No, you have to do all 4. We're talking about the inner mizbeach, not the outer mizbeach. It's on Yom Kippur. The inner mizbeach. V'taval v'lo masafek. You got to dip your finger in there. You can't say, well, just a little bit of blood in there. I'll get it down by not by stirring it, by
smearing your
by getting it, by smearing your finger, actually by sponging it up from the sides of the kli. That's not good enough. It's got to be down. You're actually putting your finger into it. That means v'tava v'lo masafek. It's got to be a svog. It's like sponge. Don't sponge it up from the sides of it. So that teaches me. Now it says those words where by Par Kohen Mashiach. Par Hamadover is already mukash to par Mashiach. How do we know by Yom Kippur it also has to be that way? Because of the word lapar. That's what it's for. It's got to say badam. If we wouldn't say in the blood, because Rachmana B'Tavo have a mina afagav like a Shiur tefillah, even though there's not afagav like a Shiur tefillah. If we wouldn't say badam, I would think that B'Tavo, okay, you could just do all this as long as there's enough every time you put your finger in there, or whichever cup you use, enough for one tefillah. No, when you start off, there has to be enough for all the tefillahs. Because Rachmana Badam, the time has got to be enough blood there for all four. Because Rachmana Badam have mina afilu masavik. If it's just dam afilu, even if I have to get the dam by sponging it up from the sides of the kli. Because Rachmana B'Tavo, tell us no, you got to be able to dip your finger in there, dip it in there, and the liquid will just go on your finger without having to scrape it up, so to speak, from the sides of the kli. Then the pasuk goes on, Mizbach Zebach Torah. Remember, we're still in pasuk chaf there. Remember, don't leave your finger from pasuk chaf. What does it say there? Which the page? It says, Basal apar kasher asal apar chatos ken yasalo v'chiper koin v'chiper v'koin v'nislachem. Where does it say Mizbach HaKtoras? Not in this pasuk, right? Basal apar. That's the doubling up. But the pasuk says here al karnos hamizbeach, or let's see, what does it say? Here by Parko Mashiach in the right place before pasuk vav. V'nasan hakohen ben adam al karnos Mizbach Ktoras hasamim. Okay, again, they're all mukish to one another. What does that teach me? Mizbach Ktoras hasamim. Lamali. What does that teach me? Shem lo nischanach hamizbech b'Ktoras hasamim lo hiyamazeh. The mizbech had to be first dedicated with the Ktoras hasamim. That's the Pitam HaKtoras. We say you had to dedicate it first. In other words, if you didn't have a proper dedication initially there on the mizbech, you can't use it. Tani Kabasura Papa. Now we're going to bring a proof.
The daily?
No, the original one.
The original?
The original Nischanach. In other words, let's say you just made a new mizbeach there. It's got to be Mizbeach Tam. Right. No, if you had it, if let's say they put a new mizbeach there for whatever reason, the mizbeach got broken up and they put a new one there and they didn't dedicate it properly, you can't use it. That's what he's telling you. It's got to be mizbeach of K'toras Hasam that Hasam was there. Now. Yeah, it could happen. Yeah, it could happen. The break or whatever happened, or the first time that they set it up, that it'd be used there. So Papa said, now we have a brisa, says the Gemara, Tanya Kabase Dra Papa. Tanya Kabase Dra Papa. In what sense? What brisa are we bringing now? Yeah. Rashi said before. Rashi says Mizbach K'toras Lamali Hashash Sheba Omoed Al Kolomer Mizbach K'toras Sam My Darsha Spei. Ta'iser, it's teaching me that. Shalom Schanach Emira Paralem Ba'od Mizbech Chadash Shalom Tiru Leftar Sam and Meolam. They never done it there. You got to use it. Tanya Kabas Papa. The Kesha Le'es V'Dam Tefila. Also, what is the hekesh of Lapar to teach me that this business about Es Dam and Par, that the Kohen could have a wart, and there's got to be enough blood in there initially before he does any of this rikas for all four. And you can't wipe it up, but it's rather dipping it in the liquid without having to wipe it up to sponge it up from the sides. That Rav Papa said, and we learn out Yom Kippur from there, Lapar, that's what the drush is for, Baisa like that. It says, V'asa kasherasa. Again, that Rav Papa started off by saying, V'asa kasherasa, when you repeat it, right, the pasuk was repeated for all these Russian, Matam Olom Lapar. Right, what does it say? Lapar, L'Rabbas Par Yom Kippurim L'Chol Masharim. So everything was said over here. Divrei Rebbe. That's what Rebbe learns. That's the gear so that they prefer Divrei Rebbe. Some have a different gear, so Divrei Rebbe. That's what Rebbe says. Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel now disagrees. Now we're going to get into different interpretations of that pasuk. Rabbi Shmuel, Kal v'chomer, I don't need a pasuk there. You're saying, how do I know that on Yom Kippur you also have to have Es, Dam, and Tefillah, and it's all that's what it's for. Remember that the avodas of Yom Kippur Ma'akiv, we already said. Rabbi Yehuda learns that out from Bechila Mikaper Asakodesh. Got to do everything, otherwise it's no good. It's like or because Chukah was written over there, if you're in that drasha. But we have another drasha. So what do I need Lapar for? To teach me that Es, Dam, and Tefillah applies by Yom Kippur too. Rabbi Shmuel says, I don't need a pasuk for that or a word for that to make a hekesh. I have a kal v'chomer. Listen carefully. Rabbi Shmuel, kal v'chomer. Uma b'makom shluish for carbon carbon. If I have two different kinds of animals, in other words, some carbons require a par, some require a sow or a goat. Marach in a place. Now we don't know what that place is yet. The Gemara is going to explain that in a couple of minutes. He says, listen on the kal v'chomer. Marach in a place where the animals are different species of animals. Hishpa masm l'masm, but the rites or the procedure, the rites RITE, the rites or the procedures are the same, even when they're two different species of animals. Malkum shehush for carbon the carbon, where the animals are the same, like they're both parim, as we'll see, or both sa'ir, so we'll see. And it didn't she sheva masa l'masa. So he's saying it's a kal v'chomer. Why do you say that? How do I know that on Yom Kippur I have to have those three things? We'll call it the three things: the badam, badam, and the shiur. The three things. How do I know I have to have Yom Kippur from the word lapar in pasuk chav? It's got a kal v'chomer. Madach in places where the animals aren't the same species, the rights are the same. So certainly when the animals are the same, the rights should be the same. So what does Rabbi Shmuel do with lapar? That's the param of tzibur. But wait a minute, we're talking about param of tzibur. Pasuk Chav, it says lapar. The first lapar in Pasuk Chav is we're talking about means for Yom Kippur. He says no, it's not for Yom Kippur. It's for the param of tzibur. But we're talking about param of that parsha is param of tzibur. We'll come to that question on tomorrow's daf. We'll see that soon. We'll get there. We'll see that soon. But he says lapar is Ramot of Tzibur, lapar ze parka Mashiach. Okay, in that he agrees with the first drasha that the second lapar is the parka Mashiach. You're going to do for this par Palamadabar the same way we did for the parka Mashiach a few psukim before, right? That's what he's okay. Now let's understand this Rabbi Shmuel. Amar Mar, halfway down on Mem Amid Beis. Amar Mar. Umamakum shlo hishva carbon lekarbon. Marach in a place where the animals are not the same, two different species of animals, right? We say what? That the rights are the same. So certainly when the animals are the same, the rights should all be the same. My lohish for carbon lekarbon. What's the example? What are you talking about where the kabbalas are different? Ilay mapar yom kippur. This sa'ir yom kippurim. Maybe you'll tell you, listen, the par yom kippur and the sa'ir of yom kippur are both kabbalas that you bring on yom kippur, but they're two different animals. One's a bull, one's a goat, right? Right? That's what you mean. So marach in a place where the animals are different species. Their rights are the same, the procedures are the same. Certainly, where the animals are the same, the rights should be the same. In other words, when you have a par of Yom Kippur and the par Kohen Mashiach should also be the same. Remember, the place where it says the three things are by par Mashiach, not by par Medaber. Okay, but par Medaber is compared to Mashiach, and so is now the par of Yom Kippur. You can ask, wait a minute. You can't learn anything. You want to learn out from the power of Yom Kippur and the sorrow of Yom Kippur. You want to learn that out to what? To some other case where it's not Yom Kippur? That's different. Yom Kippur is different. Why? Because those dams are brought inside the Kodesh Kodashim, right? A regular chatos chutz is brought only in the four zrikas, and like you said, only one is necessary. The param, the inside param, you have to have 7 towards the paroches and another 4 on the mizbeach, towards the samim, mizbeach hazav. That's 11, right? On Yom Kippur, we'll see there's as much as 42 or 48. Remember, Yuma, we'll come back to that, right? There's a lot of zrikas because they do inside the Kodesh Kodashim, right? So malachshik, you can't learn out from Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is all of Naiv. So what two are you talking about? Madach, where they're two different species, they have the same rights. Certainly, where they're the same species, they have the same rights. Ella, what is the two different species that you're talking about that you're starting the kavacham with? Ella, parel medavar shel tzibur, the seir avaros kachavim. Parel medavar of tzibur and the seir and the sar that we bring for a sin of avodah zarah. There the species are different, and what? And the rights are the same. Those are different because those are machaper for sins that we know. Meaning, the paral madavar shel tzibur is when they made a mistake on a particular sin that Bezdin and Paskin wronged about. They know what sin they did. Right? And now they're machaper for that. Sorry of avodah zarah, that's the sin, avodah zarah. You want to compare that to Yom Kippur, where the sins are for things that are not known. Remember, what's not known on Yom Kippur? You bring for Tumas Mikdash. You went into the base of Mikdash, and you didn't remember afterwards, or you didn't know lechatchila. There's different. Remember, there's sar of Chodesh, sar of Golem, sar of Yom Kippur. Rashi brings down near the end of the page on Rashi, as opposed to on Yom Kippur, we're bringing it down for the sar of Yom Kippur, or the sar of Yom Kippur is brought for, like the last Rashi on the page. Al sheish b'yediyah b'tchil b'yediyah, right? Right? Shlosh like Russell shezemachap alavesh mitzvah she'eni yadua zemachap mitzvah yadua kanam shvus. 4 lines from the bottom of the page in Rashi. Al sheish b'yediyah b'tchila v'ein b'yediyah b'sof. When he came tamei, he knew that he was tamei. Then he forgot. He went into the base of Mikdash. He forgot about it. right? So Sor Nasa B'Fnim Al Yisrael Parshal Konim, that's mechaper for them. So you can't learn out. In other words, those are different. Those maybe require all those requirements. Where by the par helam davar shel tzibur and the sar of avodah zarah, because you know what sins there were. So you can't learn that out to Yom Kippur, where you're mechaper for a mitzvah that you didn't know what you did. Ella, so therefore what? So what's the case? What's the kal v'chomer he's saying? Ma'arach in a place where the species are different, the rights are the same. Certainly where the species are the same, the rights should also be the same. Ella, param davar shel tzibur, v'soyer shel Yom Kippurim. So now we have one where you knew this Aveira when we didn't know the Aveira. The power of Yom Kippur and the sor of Yom Kippur, the power rather of Helm Davar, and the sor of Yom Kippur, which are two different animals, at Vachikamer. Uma b'makom in the Gemara, 4 lines from the bottom page in the Gemara. Ma makom shlish for carbon where the species is not the same. The high par, the high sor. One's par of Shosibur and one's the sor of Yom Kippur, 2 different species. Hushbu masim lamasim lamai de kosaba, but their masim are similar, are the same for what's written there. What do you mean by written there? So Rashi here is already Rashi on Amar Aleph. From Mem Aleph, the top Rashi is going on this Gemara. That you have the same. Number one, you got to use the etzba. You got to do it on the 4 corners. You got to do the 7 zrikas towards the parochas. Even though Yom Kippur is a little bit different because Yom Kippur has an 8th one, and Yom Kippur's lefnai lefim goes inside the kashish kashim. But whatever's written there are similar. In other words, what the things that are said there beferish are similar. They're similes in that sense. So again, hushva masm l'masm l'madikosvu mokum shehushva where the species are the same. The high par, they're what? One's a par and the other's a par. What do we mean by that? You have the par kohen Mashiach, which says the 3 things, and you have the par of Yom Kippur, where it doesn't say the 3 things, and it didn't shush masm l'masm. So certainly the masm should be the same. And meaning you should have the 3 things of the S, Badam, and the Tefillah should be the same. Rashi here on Amar Aleph now, and Mem Aleph Amar Aleph, Rashi about 10 lines down on the page, Malkum Shusha Carbon, the high par, and it didn't Shiyushvu, Masa, Avodas Hushvu, Vishnem, Kigon Azos, to Parochas, Visham Azbachazov should be the same. And therefore it should be, so that was the Kal V'chomer that Rabbi Shmuel said. I don't need Lapar for that. I don't need Lapar. The first Lapar is not Yom Kippur, because I know it from a Kal V'chomer. Okay. But also like Par Yom Kippur. So now, how do you know Par Yom Kippur has S? Last B'dam and Tefillah, mi Par Kol Mashiach, because you have a Kal V'chomer. But also like Seir Yom Kippur. What about the Sar of Yom Kippur? How do you know that has it? Mi Seir Avodas Kachavim. The Sar of Avodas Kachavim, which is what? Which is written. How do you learn that Sar of Kachavim? We said that's what? From the word Hachatos. On Lamed Testament Beis, the 2nd line of the Gemara, if you take a look back, Hachatos Elu Siras Kachavim. Okay, so we have Siras Kachavim is learned out from what? From the Par Kohen Mashiach and the Par Elam Davar word, because it says it in the Parsha of Par Elam Davar. So Sar Yom Kippur is learned out Misi'ir Avodas Kachavim. Now we say, wait. The Siras Kachavim is learned out from Par Elam Davar, Shel Tzibur, and the Par Kohen Mashiach. And the Sar of Yom Kippur is learned out from there. Mikal V'chomer, right? From the Kal V'chomer. What's the Kal V'chomer? Because they're both seirim. Marach in a place where the animals are different. The par helam davar shel tzibur, and the sar of Yom Kippur. Right, those were the 2. Elapam davar shel tzibur and the sar of Yom Kippur. Those are different. Yet the rights are the same. So when the 2 animals are the same, you have a kal v'chomer. That's what Bishmal said. So Mele say par Yom Kippur is learned out esdam and tefillah from par kohen Mashiach. From par kohen Mashiach, what with this kal v'chomer? It says it right because by Par Mashiach it says Esdam and Tefillah, and now we're saying right, and it says it there, and we have a Kal V'chomer. Doesn't even have to say in the same parsha. And also, and the Sar of Yom Kippur is going to learn from Sar of Kachavim Kal V'chomer. But how do we know Sar of Kachavim has halacha? Because that's from Hekesh. Says the Gemara B'chidavar Lavim B'Hekesh Choser Malam B'Kal V'chomer. It can something that's learned out of a Hekesh. When it comes to karbonos, can you learn out? Then in other words, if B is learned out from A with a hekesh, can you now learn out C from B with a kal v'chomer? Amar Papa Ksavar Tana the Rabbi Shmuel, which is we're quoting here Rabbi Shmuel. So Tana Shmuel holds Davlam hekesh choser malam b'kal v'chomer. Now if you look at my chart that I gave out, 20 years ago and whatever it was 22 years ago, and I sent it out this morning by email. Also, it's on your email in case you misplaced it. Okay, I did not. There's your chart, right? You got it? Okay. So if you look at the very first, case, what do we have here? Look, let's see. Look at the first column, Davar Behekesh. That's what we're talking about over here. This Gemara is really from Mem Testament base, which we're going to have next week. Right. But the question over here is this again. So Rabbi Shmuel is saying, I learn out Kal V'chomer. I can learn Yom Kippur from Mashiach with a Kal V'chomer. That's how I know Dam Tefillah, Es Dam and Tefillah is learned out by Yom Kippur, just like by Parka Mashiach based on the Kal V'chomer. And in the third line of the Gemara, B'asla Sir Yom Kippur, B'Siras Kacham Kal V'chomer. The same Kal V'chomer, right? If things which are not same species have the same rights, things which have the same carbonates that are the same carbon, the same species, certainly have the same rights. Okay, that's from so you learn out Yom Kippur from Avos Kachavim, but Avos Kachavim itself is learned out from a Hekesh, as we just said, Mahachatas. The Chidavar Lam Behekesh Choser Lam Kal V'chomer. Because something is learned Hekesh, meaning Avos Kachavim is only learned out where Avos Kachavim is learned out of a Hekesh. Can that be learned out? Can that now further teach the Sar of Yom Kippur to a Kal V'chomer, based on this Kal V'chomer? Again, you're going to learn out the Sar of Yom Kippur from the Sar of Avos Kachavim, but the Sar of Avos Kachavim is only learned out of a Hekesh. If you learn out B from A with a Hekesh, can you learn out C from B with the Kal V'chomer? Now I'm looking at, they're not marked here, but if you look at the chart, the second column from the right, Davlam Behekesh, Ma'amalam Behekesh, low. So he said there, if you learn Hekesh to Hekesh, no. Hekesh to Gzereshava, no. What's the third one down? In the second column from the right side in the chart, I guess the fourth line there. Davlam Behekesh, can you learn out Kal V'chomer? But Rabbi Shmuel says yes. Rabbi Shmuel says yes. Something learned out. This is all only by Kachim. By other cases, it's not Kachim in the Torah. This chart doesn't apply. This is by Kachim. Something that's first learned out. If you learn out B from A with a Hekesh, can C be learned out from a Kal V'chomer from B? The answer is yes, like we just said now. Okay, that's now put the chart aside. Let's go back to the Gemara. Lapar Zepalam Davar. This is going on with the Shmuel's drasha. Remember, he learns out Yom Kippur from Paral Madavar Shel Tzibur and Par Kohen Mashiach based on the Kal V'chomer. Okay, what does he do with Lapar? That first Lapar, which the first way to learn Rapap, etc., the way we've explained it has been Lapar was for Yom Kippur. He says, I don't need Lapar for Yom Kippur. It's a Kal V'chomer. So what is Lapar? Zepam Davar Shel Tzibur. That from Tzibur says the Gemara. What do you mean? How about Sefer Gufik Siv? That's what I mentioned this question before. Pasuk Chaf is speaking about what? Parham Davar Shel Tzibur. The whole thing is from the Tzibur. Start off Yigimel. In Kladas Yisrael Yishku, and Hamadar, they Parham Davar Shel Tzibur, and then they found out about it. They said, bring the carbon, the Tavel, like, oh, okay, we learned everything out. And this is Vasal Lapar, Kasha also Lapar Chatas. What do you mean, Lapar? Why does it say Lapar? If we're talking about, just say Vasa, do for this animal, Kashas Labar Chatas. We're talking about Parham Davar Shel Tzibur. Habat Tzibur Gufik Siv, Amra Papa, Mishum Deboy Agmuri, Parham Davar Shel Tzibur, Bioseres, B'shtei Klagis, L'Sieres Kachavim. We want to teach that just like by Parham Davar Shel Tzibur, you have to bring the Emurim, the Oseres Kachavim Shel Klagis, and we want to teach that to Sieres Kachavim, where it doesn't say that there. And Uparam Davar Shel Tzibur B'Gufei Loksiv. It doesn't say exactly those words by Parham Davar Shel Tzibur. It's only learned out from a Hekesh from Par Kohen Mashiach. So, but it's only learned by Hekesh Asi. So it's only learned. It doesn't say beferish. It says only via Hekesh. So it's Par. Therefore, the Par it says over here Lemeve Command Chsive B'Gufei to say that if it's written B'Gufei V'Lav Yidavim LaHekesh Chosem La Hekesh. Remember, now look at the chart again. The chart again in the second column. The first box there, double the Hekesh. Can you learn out the Hekesh? No. So therefore, in other words, how do you know by Parham Davar Shel Tzibur that the Yoseres and Shtei Klavos are listed there? It doesn't say it beferish. It's only learned out from a Hekesh from Par Kohen Mashiach. And now we want to teach that to Sivas Kachavim. Also, the Yoseres and Shtei Klavos apply the Emurim. And that's only going to be learned out from a Hekesh. So if you learn out B from A with a Hekesh, you can't learn out C from B with a Hekesh when it comes to Kachim. Those are the Klalim. So therefore, he says lapar here to emphasize again, so to say that it's if it's written over here, even though we're talking in the parsha of Param Dav Shel Tzibur, but it says again lapar to tell me, to make it that the hekesh you learn out, that Yisur and Shnei Klos applied by Param Dav, just like it is by Param Mashiach, it's as if it says it beferish. So therefore, it's as if it says it beferish. Now you're not learning out C from B with the hekesh and B from A with the hekesh, but rather it's as if it says B beferish, and now you're just learning out C from B, and there's no A involved. Again, Amar Papa, I'm reading it again, the Gemara. Mishum de boy agmure param davar shel tzibur b'yasers b'shel klavus asers kavim, because we will learn out siros kachavim from param davar shel tzibur, right? Upam davar shel tzibur b'guf eloksiv. It doesn't say b'feir shir b'hekesh asi. It's learned down only out from a hekesh, right? Rashi says, I'm reading Rashi over here. Take a look at Rashi before the lines get wide. Amar Papa, the high lapar, the mugger b'shmol, the param davar mishum de l'kaman. We want to learn out par. Later on, the this Gemara is going to say that on this daf, Ella, there's called the Chelbo, says Yaakov Menu, Ubekesha, by Koragomel, Parakom, you learn out from Parakom, there it says Beferish, the Oseras Hakovet in the Shtei Kloyos. So therefore it says Lapar over here, this extra parts to teach me, it's as if it says Yoseras Hakovet in Shtei Kloyos, Beferish by Param Dav Shel Tzibur, and then you can learn out a hekesh to Siros Kachavim. Back in the Gemara, Amra Papa Mishim Deboy Agmor Param Dav Shel Tzibur B'Yoseres V'Sheis Klovis Siros Kachavim. Uparam Dav Shel Tzibur B'Ufei Loksev. It doesn't say by Param Dav that favors those words Yoseres and Sheis Klovis. Vacation it's only enough from hekesh to from Parakam Mashiach. So Israch Lapar. Therefore, you need this extra Lapar. Even though we're in the parsha of Param Dav Shiva, it says again Lapar Lamhavi Commandach Siv Be'Begufei, to make it as if the hekesh that you learn out from Parakam Mashiach. Now it says lapar. It's as if you put those words beferish in the parsha of Param Dav Shel Tzibur. V'lo lahavi davar lo mehekesh chozer lo mehekesh. Even though we just said before the davar lo mehekesh chozer lo b'kal v'chomer, that Rabbi Shmuel teaches that, but davar lo mehekesh is not chozer lo mehekesh as we see in the chart. Lo mehekesh mehekesh is lo lechatas mikashim. In other words, davar lo mehekesh is if you learn out B from A with a hekesh, you cannot learn out C from B with a hekesh by kachim. All right, we'll stop here with Tanya Kavasar Papa. This will be on tomorrow's daf, which will be on the podcast. And on Sunday morning, Eretz Hashem, we'll start at the bottom of Shabbos' daf. The last two lines, there's a meisvei, there's two dots there, 2 lines from the bottom of Mem Aleph Amid Beis. Shabbat Shalom L'Kulam. Check your email if you haven't already. Although I made a mistake in the email, I must say, because in the email I said that the chart will be helpful also for, I think I wrote Daf Mem Gimel, and I really meant to say Daf Mem Aleph, which is what we're on now. I meant to say Mem Aleph, but you'll get the idea. You'll need it. You'll need the chart. Shabbat Shalom L'Kulam. Oh, Kol HaKavod.